Hi everybody, thank you for joining us today for our Difference Maker Movement chat. I am so very happy today to be having this discussion with JoAnna Brandi, our Chief Inspiration Officer. Yes, that's right, Chief Inspiration Officer. Our topic today is what's your return on happiness? It's a little unique conversation. I don't know that we get to always talk about that, but I think it's one that flows very nicely in our difference maker movement, because I don't know that everybody, we're out there and we're always trying to make a difference. We're always trying to do something to make an impact, but happiness is a big part of that. So I'm going to ask JoAnna to tell you just a little bit about JoAnna Brandi and how she got started in this. And so could you give them a little bit of a brief bio and tell them what you do?
We'd love to. For 27 years, I've been working in the field of customer experience, teaching people how to create happy customers. 12 years ago, I became a happiness coach, and I really began to understand that happy customers, happy donors, happy anybody, it comes as a result of leadership. So I became a happiness coach and then started developing programs on positive leadership. And I now teach positive leadership and happiness in the workplace, always focused on that end result of the happy customer, the happy donor, the bigger mission.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
And look at that big smile. I think you can tell she just leads, she kind of just follows the talk and the walk and the whole
You have to
feed.
kind of live it to teach
Yes.
it. I mean,
Yes.
imagine hiring me and say, wow, I got the grumpiest, happiest happiness coach.
Well,
You wouldn't want to say that.
In your bio, somebody said that she's better than a second cup of coffee. So
We have a lot of energy.
Yeah. So why is happiness at work vital to success?
Happiness it impacts every single business metric, every one. It impacts your profitability, it impacts your performance, it impacts your productivity. It impacts your safety records, it impacts your customer retention, it impacts everything. So when you create a happy culture where people enjoy coming to work, there's a lot more of everything. Happy people have 65% more energy than unhappy people. So when you think about that, even in the context of where you work here, when someone comes to work and they really want to be there, and when they really enjoy what they're doing, and when their leader knows how to encourage them and work from their strengths rather than their weaknesses, you see a whole different kind of performance.
Wow. So how can happiness at work make your wellness programs really shine?
It's really great for wellness programs, because when we look at wellness in most organizations, we're generally looking at physical wellness. And the amazing thing about happiness, the way that happiness actually works in the body, is that when you're happy, there's a biochemical change in the body. So when you're thinking a happy thought, you're actually producing a set of chemicals that turns on your parasympathetic nervous system, like the chemicals of calm, the happy hormones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're feeling good, when you're feeling happy, your body begins producing more endorphins. Your body begins producing more serotonin, which helps you sleep and be a little bit more even. So your body has a response to that, excuse me, and that turns on your natural healing mechanisms. So it's actually easier to get to your wellness goals if you focus on the emotional goals of how can my employees be happier? How can I focus more on their strengths? How can I make them excited about coming to work every day? There's a myth, excuse me, there's a myth in management, I think, and that's the myth that we can motivate others. We can't motivate other people. People motivate themselves. But what we can do is to create an environment where people feel good about themselves in our presence. So that's where I focused my practice, is how do I teach leaders to be more positive? I call them positive energizers.
Okay. So, you know, it just dawned on me, like in what you're saying, besides the wellness programs, when one's getting a review or a review of their talents, most times it's what you didn't do.
Exactly.
It's where your deficiencies lie.
Exactly.
It's not what you did well.
And I'm going to add to that a little bit, because you are so right on target with that. when I talk to you, as your leader, and I talk to you about your strengths, and I say, Mary, you are so good at, and Mary, I really appreciate you when, and Mary, you provide so much value for this organization because. When I tell you those things, what happens is that your performance now is going to go up over 36%. So you're going to walk out of there and you're going to feel strong, you're going to feel confident, you're going to feel, ready to, take on the world. But if I call you in and I say, Mary, your performance is pretty good, but, behold the underlying truth, but here's where you're weak. As you're listening to me talk about your weakness, I'm sucking the energy out of you. So what happens is that your performance is going to go down over 24% as a result of that conversation. So there's this 60-point spread between my focusing a lot on your strengths and my focusing exclusively on your weaknesses. And I think that's a function kind of the industrial age. Because we were so used to assembly lines, we treated people like they belonged, that part's broken, let me fix it. We have to think about leadership totally different now.
So what kind of happiness would help a company flourish?
Well, it's interesting. Excuse me one second. My teacher is Dr. Martin Seligman, who is the founding father of positive psychology. And he went on, after the book that I was trained on, which is called Authentic Happiness, he went on to write a book called Flourish. And he tells us that he calls them the 5 pillars. I call them the 5 paths, 5 pillars of well-being. He doesn't use the word happiness anymore, doesn't like it anymore. I love it. But there's 5 ways to get to happiness. One is through pleasure. So when we think about work, we don't always talk about pleasure. But as I walk around this beautiful building here, I can see how you've made this a pleasurable experience to be here. All the different things. You have the flowers in the lobby and the opportunity to get a massage and all those kinds of things. You actually make this a pleasurable experience. But the other ones are engagement. That's being, you know what engagement means. In the flow, really absorbed by what you're doing. Relationships, that we interact with others in enriching ways. Meaning, and we know what that is, especially in the nonprofit sector, because that is the most important. That's mission. That's mission. How am I connected to that mission? And accomplishment. So there's 5 of those. There's 5 paths. So happiness at work can come from any one of those. So maybe there's not a lot of pleasure where you work, but maybe there's a ton of engagement. And maybe there's not as much meaning as you'd like, but there's a lot of engagement and it's a pleasurable experience. So everybody, in looking for their own happiness and well-being in the world, can take any one of those paths or all 5 of them.
So you kind of have to give and take a little bit too.
And sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. When I first started studying this, we had to take these assessments to tell us where we were strong and where we weren't. And I was low on pleasure. So here I was in happiness coaching school, right? And each one of us we worked in a pod with 24 people, and then we worked with partners. So after we did this, we had to report back into our partners and our pod. So JoAnna's assignment was to learn how to experience more pleasure. And I did that by learning how to savor. And the thing that I savored the most was dark chocolate. So every time I had dark chocolate, I made like an event out of it.
Okay.
And every time I walked on the beach, I really I became very present to the experience itself. And over time, because we had to keep retesting ourselves, over time, the pleasure in my life expanded, which was really nice because it balanced out, I own my own business, so I work a lot. So it balanced out, I had a lot of meaning, I had a lot of engagement, all that kind of stuff. But what was missing in my life was the pleasure. So by focusing on it, I got more of it.
That makes sense. I think, yeah. So how do leaders take happiness and create and a culture that is fueled by happiness? Because I think sometimes when they use the word happiness,
I know.
I'm sorry. I mean,
let's use positive emotion.
Well, any of that? I think some people think of it as being soft. I mean, it's a little fluffy. It's a little, because it's not tangible. in some cases. And but I do believe that all of the things that you say are true because, because we've lived in, you live and breathe in some of that, and a negative energy. So how can a leader take and create a culture that is really fueled and use happiness to its advantage?
And let's maybe just say positive emotion at the moment, because I think that's, when you think about leadership, and you know a ton about leadership, the fuel, leadership's all about managing energy. It's not about managing time. It's about how do I manage the energy of these people that work for me. So energy is the currency that leaders have to work with. And so what a leader wants to do is create more energy gains than energy drains. So we create energy gains by realizing that everybody's got two sets of needs. We have business needs. So as an employee, my business need is I need the paycheck, I need my medical insurance, I need for you to be within a half hour of my home so I get to the daycare center on time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then everybody's got emotional needs. So I need to feel valued. I need to feel appreciated. I need to feel part of something larger. And you just fill in the blanks.
Right.
And I do this exercise all the time in my workshops. And sometimes we get 13, 14, 15, 18 different things in that emotional column. So a leader needs to spend more of her or his time focusing on what they have to do to create those intangible things like, I really feel valued here. So the equation, and we actually have a positivity ratio, in a high performance organization, you want 5 times more positivity than negativity. 5 times more focus on what's right than what's wrong.
So how do you measure that?
Well, you start by looking at, a leader always starts in the same place, by looking at yourself.
Okay.
How often during the day do you notice somebody doing something right?
Right. Okay.
How often do you tell someone how much you appreciate them?
All right.
How much do you make sure your questions are empowering as opposed to disempowering?
So start off small and you start off small. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I have different positivity practices I teach, and some of them are as simple as an appreciation audit, just because you want to change how you think. So in order to do that, you need to change your brain. And what we found out, because it is a science of happiness, is that neurons that fire together wire together. So you need to keep practicing new habits. So a new habit may be to sit down 3 to 5 times during the day and write down the things that you appreciate. Write down the things that are going right.
Okay. So how do you deal with the spillover effect where you work?
Well, the spillover effect's the best part of this, because happiness, emotions are contagious, you know that, right? So what happens, and what we've found and we can reliably track, is that the happy culture at work spills over to happy customers, which spills over into more referrals. The happy culture at work spills over into happier employees, which creates happier marriages, children who do better in school. And because happiness makes us more generous, when we create a happy culture at work, we're actually impacting the churches, everything in our community. And I think that's the piece that people don't get, is that there is always going to be a spillover effect because of how we're wired as human beings. So if I create a happy experience for you, you're more likely to go create a happy experience for the next person.
Well, I think that because if you create that, they'll want to help in the. I mean, it's all big cyclical.
It's a circle. It's a circle. We're all in it together, and I think this is an exercise I do a lot. I work with a lot of CEOs, and this is an exercise I do a lot. And I have a little map, and they have to draw it on the map. And then I say, okay, what kind of ahas did we just have? And they just look at you and go, wow, I never realized that. I never realized that how I behave here has such far-reaching effects. Now, if you've ever, I know I have, been in the corporate world, I've gone home from work crying because I have been belittled in a meeting. I've gone home from work crying because my boss didn't get what I needed. There are a lot of people that have had that experience. I was a divorced mother. I had to work. I had to work within a certain geographic area so that I could get to the daycare center on time. So I was stuck where I was. And so, I mean, there were literally nights I came home crying because I wasn't appreciated. So I think when I jumped the corporate ship to start my own business, my single-minded focus was, how do I create a situation where the people who work there go home at night and have energy left over for their kids and their hobbies and their families and the community and volunteer work? Because if people don't have the energy at the end of the day, because leaders aren't in that positive energy flow with them, there's no space or energy left for volunteering, and we need to be able to do that.
So if people would like to, or businesses would like to get in touch with you, what's your address?
Oh, returnonhappiness.com. And I have a special report called How to Make Your Workplace a Happy Place.
Great.
And that's returnonhappiness.com/happyplace.
Oh.
And if they want to find out how to get that oomph, I've got a new e-course, and that's at positiveenergizer.com.
Awesome. Thank you, JoAnna, for coming today. I appreciate it.
I'm thrilled. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.